Welcome, my friends. I'm here in Torquemada, a village in the province of Palencia, in the western end of the denomination of origin Arlanza. The DO takes its name from the river it follows during 100 kilometers from the eastern end of the denomination in the province of Burgos until dying in the river Pisuerga here in Torquemada, and eventually joining the river Duero. Although lesser known than its neighbor, Ribera de Duero, these two DOs share so many characteristics that can be considered historic sisters. Next to each other, similar in extension, and with the same climate, viticultural practices, grapes, and winemaking styles, they share a winemaking story that dates back to monks in the Middle Ages. In spite of this, Arlanza produces 100 times less wine than Ribera de Duero. It is definitely one of the DOs with the highest potential of Spain. We will meet several of the artisan winemakers who will let us know about this interesting wine production area in the north of Spain. The denomination of origin Arlanza is located in Castile and León, Spain. DO covers 67 municipalities, 54 in the province of Burgos and 13 in the province of Palencia. Only around 20 wineries can be found in this area, mostly located in many of the towns next to the river Arlanza, giving its name to the denomination. Winemaking in Arlanza dates back to the 10th century, from where the first historical documents evidence viticultural practices in the monasteries of the area. In particular, detailed documentation shows how the monastery of Santa Maria de Bujedo de Juarros purchased vineyards in the Arlanza area for their winemaking. As in Ribera de Duero, many families elaborated wines for their own consumption in subterranean caves, many of which remain nowadays and are a real pleasure to visit. As in most parts of Europe, phylloxera made most vines to be replanted in the early 20th century. Many of those vineyards are still in operation, providing fruit of great concentration, leading to exceptional wines. Torquemada, an historic village in the province of Palencia, offers an incredible treasury for wine lovers, as it preserves what is one of the most significant group of subterranean cellars in Spain, testifying to the importance of the small family winemaking in the area between the 16th and 20th centuries, right before the decrease in activity due to diseases and the exodus of the population from rural areas. The cellars in Torquemada are in a flat area, which makes them unique as they are excavated to high depths to maintain temperature and humidity. They were planned urbanistically into a cellar town, with organized streets and 5 subzones that include more than 500 cellars. Only a few wineries continue elaborating wine inside the cellars. We're lucky to visit one of them.
Esteban, we are in your cellar. It is impressive just in opening the door. It's been in your family for many generations, right?
Correct, I would be the 5th generation. It all started with my grand-grandfather, and it continued until the year 1970.
Let's see it. You still make wine here, right?
Yes, we do wine inside. 8 to 10 meters in depth. And here is where we complete the whole winemaking process, elaboration and crianza in barrique.
And you have to carry everything all the way down here?
Yes, bottles and all. When lift them from the opening where we enter the fruit.
We're here with Ramiro Garcia, President of the Denomination of Origin Arlanza of the Regulatory Council, who has just become President very recently, and we want to talk to him about the characteristics of this denomination.
Thanks for receiving us, Ramiro. How do you feel? You've just been named President.
Well, I've been here only a bit more than a month, and I am thrilled. Eager to do things. We are just starting and there are high expectations.
The denomination was finally formed in 2007, very recently. How was the situation and what did it change then?
The history of this area has not been very different to other zones of Castile and León. We do wine here since Roman times. I am the 5th generation of a winemaking family myself. I remember my grandfather, but my grandfather told me about his grandfather. Even before the phylloxera, people lived and worked in wine. When the DOs started in Spain, we got involved somehow. Originally, we were going to be part of Ribera del Duero. Indeed, the original project was for the whole province of Burgos, called Ribera de Burgos, but we decided not to join because we saw ourselves different. That was a big economic and development mistake. It was a mistake because it was a train of rural development that we missed 30 years ago. 20 years later, when they gave us our recognition, it was late.
I see. How many wineries you have now?
There are 18 wineries, but a total of 23 producers, as some producers elaborate wine in other wineries.
I see a lot of potential to this deal, particularly for the new mood to look for new varieties and lesser-known areas, specifically by the youngest consumer.
Well, you've just described it perfectly. We are going to transit from the great unknown to the great promise. There are 3 elements that place us apart from Ribera del Duero. The climate change is responsible to speed up our differential characteristics. We defined them 30 years ago, but they were not that obvious, which is why we did not enter Ribera del Duero. And today they are very prominent. First, the altitude, around 200-300 meters higher than Ribera del Duero. This leads to a marvelous maturation process. In places like Ribera and Rioja, they have lots of problems with the fruit ripening, and that affects the quality of the wines. They have to add external elements to control the structure of the wine. Another differential factor is that in Ribera or Rioja, there are vines everywhere, while here they are more difficult to find.
Now, because in the past millions of kilos were produced here.
Now you have to go up the mountain to find vineyards. They are not everywhere. And the reason is that people do not live from the vineyard here. They have other jobs. The vineyard is what they have inherited, and they are maintained for a romantic reason. What does this mean? From the point of view of quality, those who live from the grape do not risk it and make aggressive treatments against disease. Those who don't live off the grape experiment and research more and try to avoid expensive treatments. That to wineries and consumers is great news because the Arlanza grape does not come contaminated. There are several proposals on the table. The wine world is currently moving towards recovery of autochthonous varieties, to place value on terroir and sustainability. These are three lines that we want to work with. This is our strategic plan. We have a regulation with a series of conditions for the DO. We are going to define specific areas of quality. Also, since small viticulturists cannot get the ecologic certification by themselves, as it's a cumbersome process that requires 3 years of transition with regular and expensive inspections.
Maybe not that necessary due to the low disease pressure.
One differential aspect is that most of what has been planted new in well-established areas like Ribera has been done in intensive, while here we have plantings in extensive. There are vineyards planted with animals, with small separations between rows and bush-trained. Some of these are zones of heroic viticulture, with vineyards in steep slopes and impossible to mechanize. This provides a unique characteristic that makes everybody to comply easily with the regulation standards.
How do you see the denomination in 20 years? How would you like it to be?
Well, I'd like to see us become a reference in ecologic viticulture and respect to the environment. We are going to make carbon analyses to all wineries and all products. We are going to look for suppliers committed to sustainability. We will look for that circular economy that ensures a good future to the next viticulturists. I'd like people to identify us as a quality zone. Ecologic with respect to the environment, and with elaboration processes of little intervention and in harmony with the landscape. We want to bottle our landscape. Our wines must taste of Arlanza.
In this section, we will cover the specific nature of the climate, geology and soils of Arlanza, which confer its wines a particular uniqueness. The denomination of origin Arlanza possesses a marked continental climate, with long cold winters and temperatures often below 0 degrees Celsius and regular snowfall between December and February every year. Extremely long winter temperatures, even lower than in Ribera del Duero, allow harvesting of frozen grapes for the elaboration of ice wine. Summers are mild with cold temperatures during the day that can drop by up to 20 degrees Celsius overnight, helping the grapes to retain acidity and tension during a long maturation period, with harvest sometimes done in early November. Interestingly, climate change may soon position Arlanza as one of the most interesting wine production areas in Europe. Definitely a deal to keep in the watch.
We have similar aspects, particularly during summer, with Ribera del Duero. But winters are harder in our area, with more hours of cold and frost at a later time in the season than in Ribera del Duero. The altitude is also a difference with respect to Ribera. We are higher than them, which is becoming a good thing with climate change.
Climate change is helping you.
Yes, it is helping. To other areas with lower altitudes is being worse. To us, it is helping with the viticultural practices. The grapes are affected particularly during flowering and when budding starts and the vine grows, becoming delayed, which helps our efforts to delay it with a later pruning than in other places.
We're almost in February and you haven't started yet.
Correct. We will start pruning in a couple of weeks because we have already had some frosts and we expect late frosts in the season. Although this is not an exact science, we can be wrong. But this is what we will do this year. Then also we have differences in the harvest. We used to harvest later than in Ribera del Duero.
I understand that this is the latest harvest in Spain.
Yes, we have harvested on November the 1st.
We are in Villaos with Luis and Carmen Arauz, who are family owners of the winery Arauz Ballesteros here in Arlanza.
Hi, Luis and Carmen. Thanks for receiving us. How are you?
Fine.
Fine.
We're in your spectacular vineyard for the inclination and with your winery at the top of the hill. I wanted to ask you about the climate. We're talking about Arlanza as a whole, but you are in the central area of Arlanza.
Yes, more or less in the middle of the river basin.
If there is a characteristic climate, it's yours.
Similar to that of Ribera because it's extreme. But the altitude in our area is higher than in Ribera. In this vineyard we are at 825 metres of altitude above sea level, more or less, and we have a very long and cold winter. Average temperatures in January are around 3 to 4 degrees Celsius, and then the summer is shorter and relatively hot. And there is a marked variation between day and night. This is very important, particularly during the ripening of the grapes in August, September and October. Harvest occurs around the middle of October. This is important particularly in September because during the day the temperature can reach 20 or 25 degrees and during the night drop to 5 or less, sometimes close to freezing temperatures. This makes the aromas in the grape concentrate and the skins to become thicker. This is the plant's self-defense. It gives unique characteristics to the wine.
What about the rainfall?
There's not much rain. We may have 400 to 450 litres per year as a limit, and it is usually in autumn and winter.
So we're here now with David Gonzalez and Becker Prieto, who are the owners of Sabinares and Viñas.
Sabinares, by the way, because it's the name of a tree that is very characteristic to this area. We are in the highest place of the central plateau of Spain. Very strange climate, with lots of cold in winter and frosts in spring, and even close to harvest at times. And you go and choose the highest point of the area, and with the north aspect, which is not ideal to look for the light and heat, because you look for freshness in your wines.
This is honouring a place that has been neglected for a long time. A place particularly extreme. We believe that Arlanza has lots of personality and characteristics that make it so interesting. And we believe it is different in respect to other areas, with great longevity that can give us really distinct wines. As wine professionals, this gets our attention.
We are here with Andrés Septien, who is the owner of a very interesting winery here in Puente Dura. And we're going to be talking to him about a few aspects of how he is experimenting with a new way of doing wine, very, very characteristic, with the idea of displaying the real terroir of Arlanza.
Hi Andres, thanks for receiving us. I'm glad to be here with you in these vineyards that look so great.
It's a pleasure.
I wanted to ask you about everything, starting with the climate. Very extreme, cold. At this altitude, we have this constant wind, cooling this down.
As you're saying, for example, tonight we may have had -4 degrees centigrade. This is our best healthcare provider when it comes to the vineyard. It's the cold. It's the best insecticide. The only thing we use here is sulfur. We don't have the ecologic certification, but we are at an altitude of 1,000 meters. When it comes to acidity, as in the wines we will taste, it is very well regulated. And the climate is pretty balanced in winter. Temperatures of -3 to 4 degrees centigrade during the dormant period. And then in summer the heat is important during the day. Then it oscillates substantially overnight. In this terrain there is plenty of stones. This helps regulate the temperature of the vineyard. We have to be very careful. Tempranillo requires attention. You need to control it because at this altitude and climate it could be harsh in mouth, which is not organoleptically correct.
Arlanza vineyards are located at altitudes oscillating between 700 and 1,200 meters above sea level. The soils are sedimentary, with a predominant composition of clay and limestone, and vary depending on the distance to the river, with a subtle variation across the area. Let's ask the viticulturist from Arlanza directly.
We were talking about soils before. Here we have a vertical cut, the best place to explain.
You can see that there are 3 areas here well differentiated. One superficial, not particularly clear here, but that is alluvial with plenty of stones that prevent weeds to grow. And it also, at times, acts as a mirror for sun radiation. It contains organic matter and clay. You can see its red color due to a high concentration of iron. Then this other part in the middle with more lime concentration originated by the degradation of a conglomerate and with large rocks. This is very characteristic of this area. And the final part, more compact, less clay, poorer and with lots of limestone, it is degrading. It provides depth to the vineyard. These are vineyards with more than a century of age. It helps a lot as it prevents issues of water stress and provide the wines with a very special character as it is not very common in wine-producing areas around the world.
The water stress is something very important. We have a very long ripening season. This slow but continuous maturation during the season ensures the alcoholic grade stays low, while the polyphenol levels grow slowly to become really fine and elegant. That's the idea.
It is complicated because the soil is a little heavy. With so much clay, the water stays in the soil and leads to diseases like botrytis or mildew, powdery and downy mildews. It is a question of practicing good viticulture processes when it rains with the proper treatments, and we keep it under control.
Usually vineyards here have been planted in terrains with a larger concentration of sand, in plots with more sand and presence of stones, basically alluvial soils. Here, where we are now, The lower part was for growing vegetables, back in my grandfather's time. While in the highest parts of the hill, it's all been vineyards. Basically, you look for the intermediate point between a clay area and a sandy area, although clay still dominates.
Arlanza was seriously affected by the generalized abandonment of rural areas in the second half of the 20th century. Most vineyards were abandoned. Recent efforts led to the recovery of the viticultural practices in the area, which ended with the creation of the denomination of origin in 2007. Currently, a couple dozen wineries are revitalizing the denomination and restoring traditional viticultural practices, recovering centenary vineyards and harvesting grapes of extremely high quality that nicely display the unique Arlanza freshness and terroir.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna
Arlanza offers a gentle orography of terrain that facilitates running the vineyards. This can be easily mechanized, although most growers here pick by hand. There is a low disease pressure due to the moderate levels of rain and humidity during the year, and the dry and gentle wind characteristic of this elevation. A distinct characteristic is also the late harvest. Due to the average low temperatures during the growing season, the harvest usually happens in October, sometimes running into November, being one of the latest in the Iberian Peninsula.
You should be getting after it. I got facts over tracks, this and that, spitting slow, spitting fast. I could roast, I could gas, think I'm okay at last, but I don't know if that can erase all the past and the pettiness. A reflection of the emptiness, hilarious. You think you're with my time, you're delirious, mysterious, because you hide behind the fake exterior.
I want to ask about the exceptional circumstances associated to viticulture, starting with the vineyards, like this, with more than 100 years of age. Placed at the maximum elevation of Arlanza, and a terrain with stones. It has clay, lime, lots of complexity.
It's all about recovering and using the vineyards that we have in Arlanza. This is our treasure, the essence of our project. We don't want to work with young vineyards. We are looking for the unique character of Arlanza grapes, which is unique. We use all what you see here. Old vines, many which are over a century old, and many varieties planted in the same vineyard.
Becker, you're not certified ecologic, but you don't need it.
This is an extremely healthy area. This is a very high area, with sulfur and a bit of copper. We have enough to control all diseases that we could have here. Here, the most important is powdery mildew. This is perhaps the only disease that can give us more issues.
If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up. No, I don't.
These are vineyards of age, perhaps 100 years or more.
90 years for sure. This was planted by an apothecary, which is where the name of the wine comes from, Viticulture.
What care does this vineyard need? I assume that as humans, the older we grow, not only less productive, but also more prone to diseases.
That's it. The good of being such an old wine is that it self-regulates, but help by trying not to cope it with lots of grapes. We prune now, the winter pruning. I usually do it a little later, but I have advanced it this year because I am following the biodynamic cycles, as I need to bottle the rosé following the lunar cycles. Basically, to avoid getting all the work at the same time. Budding is getting earlier, and I am concerned with the spring frosts. We did not get hail this year, but this is an issue as well.
Do you follow the biodynamic philosophy?
Biodynamic, yes.
How does it help?
I don't use their treatments, no. but I follow the lunar cycles. It affects the animals, it affects the plant sap, it affects everything. This is something we pay attention to. Then we are very ecologic, only using sulfur. The best insecticide is the climate, the best antidote is the climate, and the best antifungal is the cold. I'm only introducing biodynamical practices, but gently and with respect. This is something that is important over the course of the year, particularly when considering the lunar cycles. This is our philosophy.
Carmen, we talk about diseases. We are in a dry climate, not very prone to diseases, but you may have some. What are those?
We are very lucky. This is not like in Glacier where they need treatments, as they always have diseases. Here, we don't. The rainiest years, perhaps in the lower areas where we grow vegetables in the past. Since it has lower altitude, we have some powdery mildew. But usually, we don't have diseases. We are very lucky, and a couple of sulfur treatments per year suffices.
Jamaica ice wine from Cabernet. It is so cold that you can harvest frozen grapes. You still have some clusters in the vines. These are not Cabernet, but these clusters here, you can still eat them and they're very sweet. How did you think of it?
Here in Arlanza, another winery used to make some ice wine in some years. The climate allows it. We've tried to make it in some years as well. The first time in 2017, and then we've only been able to do it again in 2020 and this year as well. The climate has to allow it. This is allowed when we have a dry autumn, as the grapes remain healthy until the freezing temperatures of January, which is the coldest month in this area. It allows to make it naturally, without any refrigeration system in the whole process. That is the beautiful side.
It must be fun to do the harvest.
Yes, fun but cold.
Yes, fun but cold. But this is one day a year. Because we do a very small quantity. Yes, you come here in the very early morning, it's still dark. You end being very cold. But it is enchanting. Yes, yes.
Here, the Tempranillo dominates the landscape, responsible for almost 90% of the plantings in Arlanza. The cold temperatures stretch this grape to unique limits in this region, which is then translated into distinct wines that display the characteristic fresh style, but capable of aging for many decades. There are other grapes allowed, such as Garnacha, Mencía, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and Petit Verdot, as well as the white varieties Albillo and Viura.
We use only what was here. We have a coupage of many different varieties. These are areas that have become frozen in time, like a remake of the viticulture of the 19th century. In that viticulture, the goal was to make wines that were rosé and harvest grapes every year with less technical preparation than what we have now. Here we have Tempranillo and many more. We have Garnacha and Mencía, and you can also find Graciano, Maturana Tinta, some vines of Cabernet Sauvignon, a lot of different varieties. And in whites, Albillo Real, Albillo Mayor, Palomino, Viura, Malvasia, Hoja de Higuera. In a vineyard like this, it is possible to find 20 or 25 different grape varieties.
Many of them end in your wines?
That's correct, we take all of them. We are trying to make a wine that expresses terroir. Not based on the variety, but based on the expression of the terroir, with all the varieties.
I don't really know what comes next, I'm just doing my best.
And the grapes here, what do you have here?
We have a very elegant coupage. We have Albillo and Viura. And we also have some varieties that we don't even identify. And then we also have Tempranillo, Garnacha and Mencía. We first harvest the white grapes to make our white wines. We do a selection. We go vine by vine, and we select the wine varieties. 3 or 4 days later, we harvest the red grapes for our wine Boticario de Silos.
I have mentioned this earlier. Arlanza wines are unique and very characteristic of a region with extreme climatic conditions that push its grapes to an unprecedented stage. We are visiting the wineries of several producers from different parts of the Arlanza DO from east to west. We will discuss with them the characteristic processes followed here to make a nice variety of wines, including ice wine and vermouth.
Andres, we are in your elaboration room. This is an author's winery. How did you prepare your wine here?
Yes, this is the elaboration room. Here we do the alcoholic fermentation in September. We use chairs to access the different deposits. The whites we ferment in barriques of French oak. The rosé this year as well. We will taste it later and I'll let you know about the name. Here we have a surprise for later, and the rest is fermented in stainless steel. Yes, this jar is to ferment some whites from Albillo and others, and it ferments and makes the crianza here. I am still learning, as clay has pros and cons, but yes, white is made here and the fermentation. Here we have a small sample of an experiment. In Puente Dura we have very small vineyard plots. We then select the white varieties, so this is a very small experiment. We also have some damajuanas, as we see there. Here they are called tinajas, and we also ferment on them. After fermentation we bring them to the cellar. It is a cellar with a constant temperature of around 14 degrees, which is very good for maturation.
What is this here, to raise temperature?
Yes, that's correct. Here we do the malolactic conversion. We close it with a blanket to isolate the Burgos's cold, and a heater inside to raise temperature to 20 degrees for the malolactic conversion. This has just finished a week ago. We are letting it cool down. Then we move it to the cellar again. Here we complete the crianza in the bottles. These are the last remaining from this past year. And here we have some small samples from little experiments that we do all the time. The bottles are very well taken care of here. They stay here until it's time to label and seal them one by one. I'll show it to you later.
What is your production? Because we're talking about wine of author.
Author and of singular plot, this all comes from the same vineyard that we have visited before. This year we made 1,005 bottles and next year will be 2,000, that for reds. For rosé we do 600 and for whites another 600. We have around 3,500 per year.
Andres, this is real artisan and bottle by bottle, with this bottle.
Yes, we do bottle by bottle. We apply the cork here by hand for the 3,500 bottles. And that is the last step. All this after they have finished the crianza. And then we apply the seal with this little thing. It heats the wax, melting it, and then we apply it to the neck of the bottle.
They're artisan, as the old seals will be slightly different.
That's right.
Here you make your wine. I see a stainless steel. You ferment all your wines in stainless steel. What kind of process? Anything in particular?
It depends. For the rosé, we do rosé first and then the reds. all from Tempranillo. The rosé is made by bleeding right after manual harvest. We macerate for a few hours depending on the year. And then we extract the must by bleeding. The reds are fermented with skins for about 15 days.
Any particular yeast?
We use different yeasts. We don't use autochthonous yeast. We are using commercial yeast. We try to respect the character of Tempranillo.
You make your Tempranillo in a range of styles. You have Crianza, Reserva.
Yes, we have Crianza, Rubel, and Selection.
Is it Reserva?
It is not. It's similar. It's a wine of author that remains in the barrique for 27 months. We don't make it every year. It depends on the vintage. The youngest is Roble, with 6 months in the barrique. We think that Arlanza wines benefit a lot from Crianza in wood, as it provides balance.
Do you have the barriques around? Here you have your barriques. Here you have the wine maturing, sleeping, resting. For how long?
It depends. Roble stays 6 months, the Crianza stays a minimum of a year, often 18 months. And the Selection, which we last did in 2015, stays 27 months. 27 months in the barrique.
Always with Tempranillo?
Yes, with a little bit of Cabernet, but only testimonial. This can be considered Tempranillo.
I believe that your wines are very popular here in Viticulture, but not only here, but in the whole nearby area.
Yes, most of our customers are local. We only sell in the area. This is a wine for local consumption with little distribution. Almost all is sold in the winery. They are all well-known clients, families, friends.
We are 10 meters underground in your winery. Here's where you elaborate your wine, right? What kind of wine?
We elaborate rosé and red. The rosé, we make it from bleeding right after a short maceration of about 5 to 6 hours. We ferment it free of skins. Then we elaborate a young red wine, a Roble red and a Crianza red. Roble with 6 months in barrique and Crianza with 12 months. All based on Tempranillo and Merlot. We have some Merlot in our vineyard and we also get it from another grower.
What did you look for in adding Merlot?
Getting some more red fruit notes in the wine. Merlot brings these notes of red and black fruits.
You ferment all in stainless steel?
Yes, in stainless steel.
And then to the maturation.
Yes, aging after the alcoholic fermentation and malolactic conversion.
What's your production?
With the 4 wines we arrive to around 12 to 13,000 bottles, more or less.
Let's go to see the barriques.
Sure.
And here you have your wines aging.
The Roble and Crianza. Yes, Roble for 6 months. Crianza for 12 months. And we do racking after 6 months, which is when we select what goes to Roble and what to Crianza. The racking is to eliminate all the lees, as the clarification has not been done yet by then. We basically decant the wine. We separate it from the lees.
You taste it and decide where it goes from there.
Yes, we have barriques of both American and French oak, with different toasting levels and ages. We taste from the different ones. And we make a selection to decide between Roble and Crianza.
I assume that you make a final tasting after all the aging to make the final blending.
Yes, that's when we decide the final coupage.
Esteban, curiously, you also elaborate liqueur and vermouths. Tell me how an alambique or stick works.
It has two parts, the hot and the cold parts. In the hot part we have the orujos after pressing the red wines, and we add a liquid part. We use part of the lees from the wine elaboration and some water to drag the alcohol of the orujos. We close it and start heating from the bottom. Distillation runs for 6 to 8 hours, starting with an alcoholic extraction of 80 to 85 AGB of the orujos, and ending with around 30 ABV. That results in an average 50 AGV in the final product. This gets the vapor to condense, and with this white orujo we get the base product to elaborate our liqueurs.
And what about your vermouth? You make it from wine, which is what relates it to this documentary. You have three: white, rosé and red, the classic.
We elaborate 3 styles of vermouth based on wine. To the base wine, we add aromas. The aromatization we do is all natural, using dehydrated natural products. The main one is the ajenjo wormwood, which is the herb providing the characteristic flavor to vermouth, and it gives its name to the drink. It is a herb found by some Italian monks in a trip to Germany looking for aromas for their wines. They found a herb called vermouth over there, which is where the name of vermouth comes from. In Spanish, it's ajenjo, which is the Artemisia absinthium.
This one you say was verdejo.
This is from the variety verdejo. This one is elaborated with rosé varieties. This one is elaborated with white varieties, and this one is made with white viura and albillo, but we add caramel at the end, which is what it gives the dark color to the red vermouth.
I can picture Don Juan Tenorio asking to be served wine for his visit to Don Luis. Since the author José Zorrilla was born in Valladolid, certainly Don Luis was served an Arlanza wine. Tasting Arlanza wines feels best when sitting at the table with the producers who dedicate their lives to obtain the best caldos, as they call their wines in the area. We have had the pleasure to try several wines, and I hope that you enjoy our conversations with the winemakers.
David, what are you doing here? This is a very typical food from the area.
Exactly. These are ribs of churro lamb, which is how we call here the baby lamb. Churro is the lamb that has not eaten anything other than milk from the mother. They are very tender, and it's very characteristic of this area.
We have already documented the roasted lamb, as it is very typical of this area. But the ribs is even more related with wine, as they were cooked at the entrance of the subterranean bodegas, right?
That's correct. The roasted lamb needs an oven and requires more infrastructure. This is very simple and can be done outdoors. It's our local cuisine.
I'm from Burgos, and this is one of my favorites. Becker, tell us about the wines. This is not just the wine tasting, as it is accompanied by the lamb ribs prepared by David.
That's the best tasting we can have. Right now we're tasting Temido 2013. We have 2 wines, actually 3. Sabinares, White of Guarda, El Confín and Temido. Temido 2013 comes from our interpretation of the Arlanza terroir.
Is it based on what grape?
It contains a varietal mix with a high proportion of Tempranillo. This is a Tempranillo of altitude. A Tempranillo that has little to do with Rioja or Ribera. It differentiates with more freshness and less structure and more longevity. It is a 2013 and is still extremely interesting in the mouth.
How has it aged?
We don't act aggressively on it with minimum extraction. We don't do remontage. a minimum extraction is sufficient to get the best of these grapes.
The tannins are very present, but nicely integrated.
Yes, it feels the mouth. It has this active character of Ribera de Arlanza, longitudinal and with freshness, accompanied with a good finish. It is a 2013 and has been in the bottle for 5 years. 2013 was a very interesting vintage for us, as it was one of the coldest we've ever had. For us, it's very interesting to work with a cold vintage in an extreme area. There are wines that are absolutely eternal.
Well, David, let me ask you. You have decided to change the plan of El Temido, El Confín, and the White. You are focalizing all your efforts into a single wine for your winery.
Just a single wine, that's correct. We started in 2011 with 3 wines based on the quantity of varieties that we find in the old vineyards of Arlanza. In 2019, we decided to simplify everything, making a single wine by combining the 3 wines that we have been doing until now. What we are doing now is to follow the ripening of Tempranillo, and when it is ready, harvest the whole vineyard, including white varieties, and proceed with an elaboration less extractive and finer.
It is more aromatic than, for example, El Confín.
There is much more fruit. The reason is that when we arrive to an area at 1,000 meters of altitude, and with extreme cold, you think that the grape is not going to ripen well. You then try all techniques, thinking that lack of ripening is going to be a challenge. However, over the years, we realized that ripening is not an issue. Therefore, we started to take risks and evolving in search of freshness. Indeed, we ended harvesting early to get less ripened fruit and work with less extraction, using whole bunches without remontage, such as a grape infusion, with more and more refined elaborations, which is the line of action for our 2019, which is substantially different than the 2013 that we have tasted before.
This is a 2019 vintage, no label yet. Do you have a name?
We will probably continue with the name El Temido. We will likely change the label, not much, but just a bit to differentiate these 2 stages.
When will you commercialize it?
We expect to have bottles in the market in 2023.
Okay, best of luck, as I find it fantastic.
Thanks. Okay, let's try this one. It's white Boticario. These grapes come from the vineyard El Caballo at an altitude of 1,000 meters, and we select the white grapes during harvest. We look for the whites.
But you don't have only one white, you have many.
Many, Albillo, Viura.
Albillo is perhaps the dominant.
Yes, probably, but some we don't really know what they are. This one has made a fermentation in French barrique, and then we place it in this clay jar. Tell me what you think of it.
I smell flowers the first thing.
White flowers, that's right, yes. And then the fruit is evident. And some wood aromas.
Also, it has apple, pear.
Then the acidity is 3.1, is marked.
I don't feel the acidity in the nose, but I feel freshness.
This is a wine to age for 5 or 6 years. It feels the mouth, the finish.
Yes, it's longitudinal. It travels well.
And it is not finished yet. This is the 2021 vintage.
This is the Rosé Clarete, typical of Arlanza for centuries.
That's correct. We have done it with 70% of red and 30% white varieties, all from old vineyard. It's called Vientos del Pueblo for two reasons. First, in honor to Miguel Hernández. It is my favorite poem of him, Vientos del Pueblo.
Vientos del pueblo me arrastran, me esparcen el corazón y me aventan la garganta.
Second, to honor all the people of the Alegría Street in Puente Dura and the wineries, because we have followed the way they have made wine here during their whole life. We have tried to replicate what they did fermenting in a French oak barrique of 4 to 5 years of age, transferred into a stainless steel deposit for crianza on its lees. Then we should taste it now.
The clarete of all times from this area. Smells fruit, strawberry.
It evolves very quickly. Sometimes I get more the white varieties. Others I get the garnacha flavors. Now, for example, I feel the tempranillo. This is like a game. Every time I come to taste it, it feels different, since it has so many varieties.
Well, the Boticario de Silos. This is your Grand Cru.
Yes, this is our insignia wine. This comes from El Caballo vineyard, where there are so many varieties. It's Tempranillo, Garnacha and Mencía mainly. In the 2020 we have only made 1005 units. This one is number 838. Mainly fermented in stainless steel, with a 10% fermented in French oak barrique. And then, as I explained before, we do a malolactic, part in steel and part in barrique, to not lose the fruit. And we always use French oak barriques of 300 liters.
It has violets?
That's correct. And then lots of red fruits. The fruit stands out.
A bit of oak, but as you say, very gentle.
Yes, some toast notes, but we don't want oak to dominate. This is a 2020 and is a wine with a long life in front of it.
Tannins are already smooth, so soon.
Exactly. Note that we are talking about 2020 with only 13.5% ABV. We harvest very early because we don't like heavy wines. As a consumer, not talking about styles, you need to follow your own way of doing and liking things. I don't like heavy and opulent wines. 13.5% ABV is a wine easy to drink.
We start with the Crianza.
Yes, a crianza from 2017. It is made with Tempranillo. It has been in the barrique for 1 year. Actually 18 months, and then in the bottle until now.
I find it very aromatic. It has lots of fruit.
Yes, in general it conserves the fruit very well. The wood is there, but gentle, not too much.
The idea is for the wine to reflect the terroir. The wood should not overpower the grape. It should display our Tempranillo. It should stand out to where we are. This is Arlanza and not any other place. It should respect it. We don't want too much extraction. We want something that can be drunk. Rounded and easy to drink.
The next one is the Selection.
Yes, this is from 2015. We select the barriques, not just their use, but we then use those that give the best wines.
Do you have all the barriques the same?
No, we have French and American oak.
And toasting levels?
Some are new, others are older, and with different toasting levels.
In the end, you taste them and decide, right?
That's correct.
For selection, we taste continuously. When we consider that it is ready, it goes to the bottle, basically to the taste of the winemaker.
Basically, my father's. This is a wine of author.
This displays less fruit, it's more elaborated. You can feel those elegant notes, perhaps a little more refined.
That is what we are looking for. We look for more structure, with the wood more integrated and with the clear goal to be drinkable when it goes into market. But you don't need to age it longer.
I like the sensation of the tannins in this wine. They're almost sweet. Smooth, they're there everywhere, but smooth.
Having had more time, they have integrated well and achieve a good balance.
Well, now the jewel of the crown, if I'm allowed. Perhaps because it's so uncommon here. The ice wine, or vino de hielo as you call it here.
Let's taste it with a local cookie. It's a whim, our ice wine. We did it as a game. We started to make it. This is the second time we do it this year. We harvested 15 days ago. We did it first in 2017. We let some grapes in the vines after the harvest to test it. That was in October, when harvest usually happens here. And we waited until January, when we have the lowest temperatures in the area, so that we can harvest frozen grapes to concentrate the sugar. Then there is a whole and long process.
It's a waiting game.
It is a simple process, as it does not require barrel aging. It is just a fermentation, but is very slow. The fermentation is at a very low temperature to preserve the fruit aromas.
Cabernet?
Yes, Cabernet.
It tastes like strawberry and blueberry.
It could be. It is a sweet but balanced wine. It's not excessively sweet. It does not overpower the rest of the aromas.
This is a great surprise. It has a very intense color.
Yes, it does.
We don't have the best light here, but you can tell. Deep ruby. Tell me, what are you looking for with this wine?
This is a roble, and we don't look for a very woody wine, but that is still driven by the fruit. Not fresh fruit, but a little riper, like marmalade, but that it displays the fruit, and with subtle notes of the wood.
It gives me plum.
Black fruits in comparison to the red fruits that you find in the young reds.
Fantastic. It has excellent tannins.
It has body, high alcohol, but not overpowering with an alcoholic sensation, but it's a wine with body and power.
Fantastic. I like the label as well. Thanks a lot for the tasting.
The visit to Arlanza has been like coming back in time to my childhood years. Indeed, I was born here, and I harvest and stomp on grapes. I ate bread soaked on wine and sugar, drank delicious punch of blueberries, wine and sugar, and played hide and seek among the subterranean bodegas when I was a little boy. It seems that I have forgotten about the freezing temperatures of January. Actually, the visit has been extremely cold. However, I also very comfortable due to its impressively welcoming people. Don't hesitate, visit Arlanza, witness its outstanding architecture and history, and try its wines and cuisine. You don't want to be the last to discover the amazing wines that this area has to offer.